I never imagined that a late-night shift, a mistake in an unbuttoned shirt would turn my entire world upside down. The storage room felt like a sauna. My breath came in short gasps as sweat dripped down my temples. The air conditioning had broken down hours ago, and the heat was unbearable. I pulled my shirt over my head and tossed it aside, not caring where it landed. Files. I needed to find those marketing files before morning, or I'd be in serious trouble. This was only my third week at Morrison & Lang's corporate tower, and I was just an intern. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody cared. That anonymity felt safe. I could do my work quietly and go home without drawing attention. But that night, everything changed in a way I could never have predicted. Looking for something? The voice came from so close behind me that I jumped, spinning around with my heart hammering against my ribs. Then I froze completely. Marshall Cross, the CEO, the man who owned this building, this company, and apparently the fear of everyone who worked here. He stood there in a perfectly tailored suit, one hand casually in his pocket, and his eyes fixed directly on me, on my bare chest, on my exposed skin. I glanced quickly at my discarded shirt lying on the floor near his feet, but before I could move or explain, he spoke first. Relax. I'm not going to file a complaint. His voice was strangely calm, almost amused. I stared at him, confused about why he was smiling. Why wasn't he angry? Why wasn't he yelling at me for being half naked in a company storage room at midnight? Sir, the air conditioning broke and I just— Shh. He raised one hand, cutting me off gently. What are you doing here so late? I swallowed hard. I needed files for the marketing department. They requested them for tomorrow's presentation. He nodded slowly, but his gaze didn't move away from me. It felt like he was studying every inch of my face, memorizing every detail. Then he took 2 deliberate steps forward, closing the distance between us. What's your name? Owen. Owen Carter. Owen, he repeated, letting my name roll off his tongue like he was tasting it, testing how it felt in his mouth. You're new here? Yes, sir. I'm an intern. He looked at me in a way that made my skin prickle with awareness. It wasn't anger or disappointment in his eyes. It was something else entirely, curiosity mixed with something deeper, something I couldn't quite identify but that made my stomach twist nervously. Come to my office tomorrow morning. 9 sharp, he said suddenly. My heart sank into my shoes. Why, sir? Did I do something wrong? You didn't do anything wrong, Owen. He said my name again and I noticed how deliberate it sounded. Just be there. On time. Then he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the silent corridor. I stood there completely still, my shirt still crumpled on the floor, my breathing still uneven. What just happened? And more importantly, what was going to happen tomorrow? The rest of the night passed in a blur of anxiety. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marshall Cross standing there, looking at me with those intense eyes, saying my name like it meant something. By the time morning came, I had convinced myself that I was about to be fired. Maybe he was being polite in the storage room, but tomorrow he'd tell me professionally that inappropriate behavior wouldn't be tolerated. I'd lose this internship, and any chance of getting a real job in this industry would vanish. I got dressed mechanically, choosing my most professional outfit. A crisp white shirt, navy tie, and my only good suit. I checked my reflection 3 times, making sure everything was perfect. If I was going down, I'd at least look presentable while it happened. The subway ride to the office felt like a journey to my execution. I kept rehearsing apologies in my head, trying to figure out what I'd say to explain myself. But every scenario ended the same way, with me packing my desk and leaving in shame. When I arrived at the building, I went straight to the bathroom to check myself one more time. My hands were shaking as I adjusted my tie. This was it. Whatever happened in the next hour would determine my future. I took the elevator to the top floor, watching the numbers climb higher and higher. Each floor felt like another step toward judgment. When the doors finally opened, I stepped out into a world of glass walls and expensive marble, a place where interns like me didn't belong. The silence up here was different from the rest of the building. It wasn't just quiet, it was powerful, intimidating, designed to remind you that important decisions were made in these rooms. I approached the reception desk, where a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper suit looked up at me, Owen Carter? She asked. Yes. Mr. Cross is expecting you. Go right in. Expecting me. Those words should have been reassuring, but they only made my anxiety worse. I walked to his office door, took one final deep breath, and pushed it open. The office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city spread out below like a kingdom. And there, silhouetted against that view, sat Marshall Cross in his leather chair. He didn't turn around when I entered. For a moment I thought maybe he hadn't heard me. But then he spoke. Sit down, Owen. I sat in the chair across from his desk, keeping my posture straight and my hands folded neatly. Professional. Respectful. Ready to accept whatever consequence he'd decided on. Then he swiveled his chair around to face me, and our eyes met. Last night, in the dim storage room, I hadn't fully appreciated how striking he was. But here, in the morning light streaming through those windows, I could see everything clearly. The sharp line of his jaw, the intensity in his dark eyes, the way he commanded space just by existing in it. I need an assistant, he said without any preamble. Someone trustworthy. Someone sharp. Someone who knows when to speak and when to stay quiet. I blinked, completely thrown off balance. Sir, I'm only an intern. Starting today, you'll work directly with me. Personal assistant. You'll report only to me. My mind went blank. Me? An assistant? To the CEO? But why? I don't have any experience. I'm not looking for experience. His gaze held mine. I'm looking for potential. Last night you proved that you'll show up and do the work even when it's difficult and uncomfortable. That quality is rare. Owen, more valuable than any resume. I sat there stunned, trying to process what he was telling me. But he wasn't finished. One more thing. He pulled a folder from his desk and slid it across to me. Everything you see, hear, and handle in this position is confidential. If you ever share any information outside this office, you won't just lose your job. Do you understand what I'm saying? I swallowed hard. Yes, good. You'll move up here tomorrow. Your desk is already set up outside. He gave me a small smile, subtle but intense. I started to stand up, but his voice stopped me. Oh, I paused. That shirt you left behind last night. I had it sent to the laundry. You'll find it cleaned and pressed in your new desk drawer. My face burned hot. He laughed softly, genuinely amused. From now on, keep your shirt on during work hours. I walked out of his office on shaking legs. When I looked at my new desk positioned directly outside his door, I realized that my life had just changed completely. He could see me anytime he wanted. Watch me. Check on me. The thought made me both nervous and strangely excited. Tomorrow morning, my new life would begin, and I had absolutely no idea if I was ready for it. The next morning arrived faster than I wanted. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror for 20 minutes, second-guessing every choice. Should I wear the blue tie or the gray one? Did my hair look too casual? Was this cologne too strong? Everything felt like a test I hadn't studied for. By the time I left my apartment, I'd changed outfits twice and was running dangerously close to being late. The elevator ride to the top floor felt different this time. Yesterday, I'd been terrified of getting fired. Today, I was terrified of failing at a job I never expected to have. The doors opened, and I stepped out into what was now my workplace. My desk sat right outside Marshall's office. A sleek, modern setup with a new computer, organized supplies, and a nameplate that read Owen Carter, Executive Assistant. Seeing my name there made it real in a way that scared me. Good morning, Owen. I turned to find Marshall standing behind me, already dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit. How did he always look so put together? Good morning, sir. We have a meeting in 20 minutes. Conference room B. Take notes on everything discussed, especially the budget concerns. He handed me a tablet. Use this. It's already synced to my calendar and files. Yes, sir. And Owen? He paused at his office door. Stop calling me sir every sentence. Marshall is fine when we're alone. Before I could respond, he disappeared into his office. I sat down at my desk, trying to calm my racing heart. This was happening. This was really happening. I opened the tablet and started reviewing the meeting agenda, determined to prove that his faith in me wasn't misplaced. The first week passed in a controlled chaos. Marshall kept me constantly busy with tasks that ranged from simple scheduling to complex report analysis. He'd call me into his office multiple times a day, sometimes for work, sometimes just to ask my opinion on decisions. At first, I thought he was testing me, waiting for me to mess up so he could justify firing me. But gradually, I realized something else was happening. He genuinely wanted my input. He'd ask what I thought about a proposal, then actually listen to my answer. When I suggested a more efficient way to organize his calendar, he implemented it immediately. "You're smarter than you give yourself credit for," he told me one afternoon while reviewing contracts. "Stop doubting yourself." But doubt was all I had. Every day felt like walking a tightrope. The other employees watched me with thinly veiled curiosity and suspicion. I was just an intern last month, and now I was the CEO's right hand. I could hear the whispers in the break room, see the looks exchanged when I walked by. Nobody said anything directly, but the message was clear. I didn't belong here. 2 weeks into my new position, Marshall asked me to stay late. "We need to prepare for tomorrow's investor meeting," he explained. "It's going to be challenging." By 8 o'clock the office was empty except for us. I sat across from him in his office, reviewing presentation slides while he made notes on financial projections. The silence between us was comfortable, broken only by the occasional question or comment. At some point, I noticed how different he seemed outside of normal business hours. More relaxed, more human. His tie was loosened, his jacket draped over his chair, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms I tried very hard not to stare at. "You're staring," he said without looking up from his papers. I jerked my eyes back to my tablet, embarrassed. "Sorry, I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how strange this all is. A month ago I was just trying to survive my internship. Now I'm here, doing this." I gestured vaguely at the office. "It doesn't feel real sometimes." Marshall set down his pen and leaned back in his chair, studying me with that intense gaze I was starting to recognize. "Do you regret accepting the position?" "No," I answered honestly, "but I don't understand why you chose me. There are people with years of experience who'd kill for this job. Experience can be taught, integrity can't." He stood up and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. "You want to know what I saw that night in the storage room, Owen? I saw someone who cared enough about doing good work that he stayed until midnight looking for files. Someone who didn't make excuses or try to shift blame. Someone genuine." He turned to face me. "This company is full of people who are very good at playing corporate games. They know how to smile and backstab in the same breath. But you?" He smiled slightly. "You're terrible at pretending. Everything you think shows on your face. And that's exactly what I need." I didn't know what to say. The weight of his trust felt heavy and precious at the same time. "I'll try not to disappoint you." "You won't." He said it with such certainty that I almost believed him. We worked for another hour before Marshall declared us finished. As I gathered my things, he did something unexpected. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a wrapped package, placing it in my hands. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a leather portfolio, expensive and beautifully crafted, with my initials embossed in gold. "Marshall, I can't you need proper materials for client meetings. Consider it a work necessity." But the way he watched me unwrap it suggested it was more than that. It felt personal. "Thank you," I managed, running my fingers over the smooth leather. "You're welcome." He grabbed his jacket. "Come on, I'll give you a ride home. It's late." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to, I want to." The drive through the city at night was surreal. Marshall's car was as sleek and expensive as everything else about him. All black leather and quiet luxury. We didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't awkward. I watched the lights blur past my window and tried to process everything that had happened in such a short time. My entire life had shifted on its axis, and I was still trying to find my balance. When we pulled up outside my apartment building, I hesitated before getting out. "Marshall?" "Yeah? Why did you really keep my shirt? You could have just thrown it away." He was quiet for a moment, his hands still on the steering wheel. Then he turned to look at me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. "Because the moment I saw you in that storage room, something changed. I couldn't stop thinking about you, about that determination in your eyes even when you were embarrassed. about how you didn't make excuses or beg for mercy. You just existed authentically. My heart was pounding. I don't know what to say to that. You don't have to say anything tonight. His voice was soft. Just think about it. Think about whether you felt it too. I got out of the car in a daze, watching as he drove away into the night. Back in my apartment, I sat on my couch, holding that leather portfolio, replaying his words over and over. Did I feel it too? The honest answer terrified me. Because yes, I did. From that very first night, something had sparked between us. Something I'd been trying desperately to ignore, because it was inappropriate and complicated and could destroy everything I'd been given. But ignoring it wasn't making it go away. If anything, working so closely with Marshall every day only intensified whatever this was. The way he looked at me sometimes, like I was the only person in the room. The way my name sounded different when he said it. The way my pulse quickened every time he stood too close. I was falling into something dangerous, and I didn't know how to stop. Worse, I wasn't sure I wanted to. 3 weeks passed, and the dynamic between Marshall and me continued to shift in ways I couldn't quite define. Professionally, everything was perfect. I anticipated his needs before he voiced them, organized his chaotic schedule into something manageable, and handled difficult clients with a diplomacy I didn't know I possessed. But personally, the boundaries were becoming increasingly unclear. Marshall had started lingering at my desk. He'd bring his morning coffee and stand there talking about nothing important, asking about my weekend plans or my opinion on random topics. Sometimes he'd just sit on the edge of my desk, completely casual, while I tried to focus on work and not on how close he was. The other executives noticed. I could see them exchanging glances when Marshall would laugh at something I said or when he'd casually touch my shoulder while reviewing documents. Today he called me into his office for what should have been a routine contract review. But when I entered, I found him standing by the window with his suit jacket removed and his shirt sleeves rolled up. It was a look I'd seen before during late nights, but seeing it in the middle of the afternoon felt different, more intimate somehow. Close the door, he said without turning around. I did, my nerves suddenly on edge. Is everything okay? Come here. He gestured to the window. Tell me what you see. I walked over cautiously, standing beside him and looking out at the city sprawled below. I see buildings, traffic, people going about their lives. I see empire, he said quietly. Every building, every business, every person down there is part of a system I've spent 15 years building. This company owns significant stakes in half the development projects you're looking at. That's power, Owen. Real tangible power. I glanced at him, confused about where this was going. Why are you telling me this? He finally turned to face me, and the intensity in his eyes made me take an involuntary step back. Because power means nothing if you're alone at the top. I've been alone for a very long time, Owen. And then you stumbled into that storage room, and suddenly, he paused, searching for words. Suddenly I wasn't thinking about empire anymore. I was thinking about you. My mouth went dry. Marshall, let me finish. He moved closer. I know this is complicated. I know I'm your boss and that creates an inherent power imbalance. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is a terrible idea. But I also know that I've never felt this way about anyone. And I'm tired of pretending I don't. I backed up until I hit his desk, my hands gripping the edge for support. What are you saying exactly? I'm saying that I want more than a professional relationship with you. I'm saying that every time you walk into this office, my day gets better. I'm saying that I think about you constantly, inappropriately, obsessively. He stopped just inches from me. And I think you feel it too. He was right. God help me. He was completely right. But admitting it out loud meant crossing a line we could never uncross. This could ruin everything. Your reputation, my career. I don't care about my reputation. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone. And I'll protect your career with everything I have. But I need to know, Owen. Do you feel this? Or am I completely misreading the situation? I closed my eyes, leaning into his touch despite every logical part of my brain screaming at me to stop. You're not misreading it. But I'm scared. Of what? Of losing this job. Of people finding out and making assumptions. Of not being good enough for someone like you. The confession poured out before I could stop it. You're Marshall Cross, You could have anyone. Why would you want me? Because you're real. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Everyone else in my life wants something from me. Money, connections, status. But you? You argued with me yesterday about the correct way to format a memo. You told me my presentation was boring and needed more visuals. You're not afraid to be honest with me, and that's rarer than you think. I opened my eyes to find him staring at me with such raw honesty that it hurt. So what happens now? That depends on you. His hand dropped from my face, giving me space to think. I'm not going to pressure you into anything. If you want to keep this strictly professional, I'll respect that. But if you want to explore this thing between us, I'm all in. Completely. No half measures. My mind raced through possibilities and consequences. If we did this and it went wrong, I'd have to leave. There'd be no way to work together after a failed relationship. But if we didn't try, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what if. And when I looked at Marshall standing there, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him before, I realized the decision had already been made. I want to try, I whispered. But we have to be careful. Nobody can know yet. Relief flooded his features. We'll be careful. I promise. Then he smiled. That rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. There's a company event tomorrow night. Cocktail party for our biggest clients. I need you there. As your assistant? As my date. He let the words hang in the air between us. We'll keep it subtle, professional in public. But I want you by my side, Owen. Really by my side. The next evening, I stood in front of my closet having a minor breakdown about what to wear. This wasn't just a work event anymore. This was our first public appearance together as, what? A couple? Were we a couple? We hadn't even kissed yet. The thought made my face burn. I settled on my best suit, the dark blue one I'd been saving for important occasions, and spent probably too long making sure every detail was perfect. When I arrived at the venue, a high-end hotel ballroom filled with champagne and expensive art, Marshall was already there surrounded by executives. But the moment he saw me, his entire attention shifted. He excused himself and walked straight to me, his eyes moving over my suit with clear appreciation. You look incredible, he said quietly enough that only I could hear. Thanks. You too. It was an understatement. Marshall in a tuxedo should have been illegal. He placed his hand on the small of my back, a gesture that could have been professional but felt anything but. Stay close to me tonight. There are some people I want you to meet. The evening passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Marshall kept me at his side constantly, occasionally asking my opinion on matters in front of important clients. I noticed how it positioned me as more than just an assistant, how it gave me legitimacy in their eyes. But I also noticed other things. The way his hand would brush mine when passing me a drink, the way he'd lean in close to speak to me, closer than necessary, the way he looked at me when he thought no one was watching. Around 10 o'clock I needed air. The combination of champagne, scrutiny, and Marshall's proximity was overwhelming. I slipped out onto the hotel's terrace, breathing in the cool night air. The city lights stretched out before me, and I tried to process everything that was happening. 2 months ago, I was nobody. Now I was here at an exclusive party as the personal guest of one of the most powerful men in the industry. It felt like a dream I might wake up from at any moment. Hiding from me? I turned to find Marshall standing in the doorway, illuminated from behind. Just needed a minute. He walked over and stood beside me at the railing. Too much? A little. I looked at him. Everyone's watching us. They're trying to figure out what I am to you. Let them wonder. He turned to face me fully. Owen, I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. I don't do this. I don't date employees. I don't blur professional lines. I've built my entire career on clear boundaries and appropriate behavior. But with you, I don't care about any of that anymore. My heart was hammering. What are you saying? I'm saying that tomorrow I'm going to announce some organizational changes. You're being promoted to junior strategist. It'll give you more authority, better pay, and more importantly, it'll make you less directly under me in the hierarchy. It won't eliminate all the complications, but it's a start. I stared at him in shock. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. Because I want this to work, and I want to do it right. He reached out and took my hand, a bold move even in the relative privacy of the terrace. I want to be with you, Owen. Really be with you. And I'm willing to restructure my entire company to make that possible. The sincerity in his voice undid me. Before I could overthink it, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. It was brief, just a moment of contact, but it felt like everything shifting into place. When I pulled back, Marshall was smiling. I've been wanting to do that since the storage room, he admitted. Me too, I confessed. We stood there on that terrace, hands linked, and I knew that nothing would ever be simple again. But as Marshall squeezed my hand and led me back inside to face whatever came next, I realized I didn't want simple. I wanted this, complications and all. The company anniversary party was in full swing when I arrived. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over clusters of executives mingling with champagne flutes, their laughter echoing through the grand ballroom. Managers networked aggressively, while interns like my former self hovered nervously at the edges. But I wasn't on the edges anymore. I stood near the balcony doors, nursing a drink I barely touched, hyper-aware that Marshall's gaze kept finding me across the crowded room. He was surrounded by board members, nodding at their conversation, but his eyes told a different story. Every few minutes, they'd drift toward me, holding for just a second too long before he'd force his attention back to whoever was speaking. The weight of that attention made my skin warm despite the evening breeze coming through the open terrace doors. I stepped outside, needing air and distance from the scrutiny I felt building. The balcony overlooked the city, quieter than the party inside but still alive with distant traffic and lights. I just started to relax when I heard footsteps behind me. Getting bored already? Marshall's voice was close, intimate in a way it never was inside. I turned to face him. It's very formal. Everyone's performing, he smiled. That rare expression that made him look younger. Want to escape? Where would we go? Do you trust me? The question was simple but loaded with meaning. I considered it for only a moment. Despite everything that made this complicated, despite the risk and the uncertainty, the answer came easily. Yes, I do. We left through a side exit, avoiding the main crowd. His car waited in the executive parking level, sleek and black like everything about him. The leather seats were cool as I slid inside. And then we were moving, leaving the party and the pretense behind. Where are we going? I asked as the city lights began to thin. You'll see, just wait. We drove toward the hills outside the city, the road winding upward as buildings gave way to trees. The heater hummed softly, filling the silence with warmth. Music played low, something instrumental I didn't recognize. Marshall said nothing, but there was no awkwardness in the quiet. It felt natural, like we'd done this 100 times before. Eventually we reached a lookout point I'd never known existed. He parked and we got out, the city spreading below us like a carpet of stars. Everything felt surreal, suspended between reality and dream. I come here when I need to think clearly, Marshall said, standing beside me at the railing. Do you have to think clearly often? More than I'd like. He looked at me then, really looked at me, especially lately. Since you started working for me, my heart picked up speed. What do you mean? He moved closer and I could see the tension in his jaw, the way he was choosing his words carefully. Owen, I need to be direct with you. This isn't just professional anymore. It hasn't been for a while. I don't see you as just my assistant or even just my colleague. The confession hung between us, heavy and electric. Marshall, let me finish. His hand reached for mine, fingers threading through mine with surprising gentleness. I know this complicates everything. I know my position makes this difficult, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way. I want you, not as an employee, as something more. The vulnerability in his voice undid something in me. All the walls I'd been building, all the reasons I'd been listing for why this was impossible, crumbled in an instant. I feel it too, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Since that first night, since you found me in the storage room, something shifted and I couldn't ignore it. His smile was genuine relief. He stepped closer, his free hand coming up to cup my face with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with his usual commanding presence. Can I kiss you? Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of us testing this new territory. Then it deepened, became more certain. His hand slid into my hair while mine gripped his jacket. Pulling him closer, the world disappeared. The city below, the complications waiting for us. The uncertainty of tomorrow, none of it mattered. Only this moment existed. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing harder, he rested his forehead against mine. Was that all right? More than all right, I managed. We stayed at that overlook for another hour, sitting in his car with the windows cracked, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about building his company from almost nothing, about the loneliness that came with success. I told him about my dreams, my fears about being good enough for this life I'd stumbled into. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, like we'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. As we drove back toward the city, I realized something fundamental had shifted. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges we'd face them together now. The decision was made, and sitting there in the warmth of his car, his hand occasionally reaching over to squeeze mine, I felt more certain about this choice than anything else in my life. Returning to the office after that night felt like entering a minefield. Nothing had changed on the surface, same desk, same meetings, same professional routine, but everything underneath was different. Marshall and I had agreed to keep our relationship private until we figured out how to navigate it properly. But hiding something this significant proved harder than either of us anticipated. In meetings, I forced myself to maintain professional distance, taking notes and offering input without letting my gaze linger too long. But behind his office door, everything shifted. Marshall would find excuses to touch my hand while reviewing documents, or he'd stand unnecessarily close when we discussed scheduling. These small moments became addictive, dangerous in their sweetness. The tension of maintaining two separate realities began wearing on me. I noticed other employees watching us more carefully, their expressions curious and sometimes suspicious. The whispers started subtly pausing when I entered the break room, resumed after I left. I told myself I was being paranoid, but deep down I knew people were starting to notice something different. On Thursday afternoon, Richard cornered me by the elevators. He was a senior manager who'd been passed over for several promotions, his resentment barely concealed beneath a veneer of professionalism. "Owen," his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Interesting how quickly you've climbed the ladder here." I kept my voice neutral. "I work hard. I'm sure you do." His tone suggested something else entirely. "Word of advice? People around here notice favoritism. They talk. You might want to be more careful about appearances." He walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing there with my stomach in knots. The implied accusation stung precisely because it hit too close to home. Was I getting opportunities because of my relationship with Marshall, or had our relationship developed because he genuinely saw potential in me? The line felt impossibly blurred. That evening, Marshall noticed my distraction immediately. "What's wrong? You've been quiet all afternoon." I hesitated, then decided honesty was necessary. Richard said something about people noticing favoritism. Marshall's expression darkened. What exactly did he say? Just that people talk. That I should be careful about appearances. I met his eyes. "Marshall, what if he's right? What if people think I'm only here because we're together?" He stood from his desk, coming around to where I sat. "First, we weren't together when I promoted you. Second, you've earned every opportunity you've gotten through your work. And third," his jaw tightened, "Richard has no right to make you feel uncomfortable. Please don't confront him. It'll make everything worse." He crossed a line. "I can handle some gossip. What I can't handle is you fighting my battles for me. That'll just confirm what people already suspect." Marshall studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "You're right. But I don't like it." "Neither do I. But we have to be smart about this." He pulled me up from the chair, wrapping his arms around me despite the glass walls of his office. Anyone passing by could see, but in that moment he clearly didn't care. "I won't let anyone make you feel less than you are. You belong here, Owen. With or without me." I leaned into him, letting his certainty steady my doubts. But even as I stood there, safe in his embrace, I knew this was only the beginning. The scrutiny would increase, the whispers would grow louder, and eventually we'd have to decide, keep hiding or face the consequences of going public. The next morning brought new complications. I arrived early to find an envelope on my desk with no return address. Inside was a printed photograph. Marshall and me at the overlook point, clearly kissing. No note, no demand, just the image. A warning. My hands shook as I stared at it. Someone had followed us. Someone knew. And they wanted us to know they knew. Marshall's door was still closed when I knocked. "Come in." He looked up from his computer, his expression changing immediately when he saw my face. "What happened?" I handed him the envelope without speaking. Watched as he pulled out the photograph, his features hardening into something cold and dangerous. "Someone followed us," I said unnecessarily. "Apparently." He studied the image, then looked at me. "How do you want to handle this?" "What do you mean?" "We have two choices. We can let this intimidate us into hiding more carefully, or we can take control of the narrative before someone else does." He set the photograph on his desk. "I know which option I prefer." I understood what he was suggesting. "You want to go public. I want to stop sneaking around. I want to stop worrying about who's watching us. And I want to stop letting people like Richard make you doubt yourself." He came around the desk. "But this has to be your choice too. It'll affect your career, your reputation. I won't force this." I looked at the photograph again, at the evidence of what we'd become to each other. Then I looked at Marshall, at the man who'd changed my entire life in the span of a few months. The decision crystallized with surprising clarity. Let's do it. But we do it right, professionally, with a plan. He smiled, relief evident. "Then let's make a plan." The board meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. All senior executives attended these quarterly reviews, making it the perfect stage for Marshall's announcements. I sat off to the side with my tablet, ostensibly there to take notes but really present for moral support. My stomach churned with nerves despite our careful planning over the weekend. Marshall stood at the head of the conference table, commanding attention without effort. He ran through financial reports and operational updates with his usual efficiency before reaching the final agenda item. "Before we conclude, I'm implementing some organizational restructuring." He pulled up a slide showing the new hierarchy. "Owen Carter is being promoted to Junior Strategic Advisor, effective immediately. He'll continue reporting directly to me but will also work cross-functionally with all departments on major initiatives." The room erupted in murmurs. I kept my expression neutral, professional, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. Richard stood immediately. "With respect, sir, this seems abrupt. Owen has only been with us for a few months. The decision is final." Marshall cut him off firmly. "Owen has demonstrated exceptional strategic thinking and insight. If anyone has concerns about this promotion, my door is open for private discussion." His tone made it clear no discussion would change his mind. Several executives exchanged glances but remained silent. The meeting adjourned with an uncomfortable tension hanging in the air. I gathered my materials quickly, intending to leave before anyone could corner me with questions. But Richard intercepted me in the hallway. "Congratulations." His sarcasm was barely concealed. "Must be nice having the CEO's personal attention. This promotion is based on merit." I kept my voice steady. "Sure it is. We all see what's happening, Owen. You're not as subtle as you think." Before I could respond, Marshall appeared beside me. His presence was like a thunderstorm rolling in, charged and dangerous. "Richard." "My office." "Now." Richard's confidence faltered. "Sir, I was just..." "Now." They disappeared into Marshall's office while I stood frozen in the hallway, uncertain whether to stay or leave. 5 minutes later, Richard emerged looking pale and shaken. He didn't look at me as he hurried toward the elevators. Marshall appeared in his doorway. "Owen, please." I entered his office, closing the door behind me. "What did you say to him?" "That his employment here is conditional on his ability to maintain professional conduct. Since he's clearly struggling with that, I've given him until end of day Friday to submit his resignation. If he refuses, I'll terminate him for creating a hostile work environment." "Marshall, you can't fire someone because they don't like me." "I'm not firing him because he doesn't like you. I'm firing him because he's harassing you. There's a difference." He moved closer. "I told you I wouldn't let anyone hurt you. I meant it." The fierce protectiveness in his voice stirred something deep in my chest. "Thank you. But this is going to make people talk more, not less. Let them talk. I'm done hiding this, Owen. I'm done pretending you're just another employee when you're so much more than that." My breath caught. What are you saying? He took my hands in his, thumbs brushing across my knuckles. I'm saying I love you. I'm saying I don't care who knows it. I'm saying you're the best thing that's happened to me in years. And I refuse to diminish that by keeping it secret anymore. Tears pricked my eyes unexpectedly. You love me? Completely. Irrevocably. Inconveniently. He smiled slightly. I fought it for a while, told myself it was just attraction or infatuation. But it's not. It's love. I'd never been good with words in emotional moments. So instead I kissed him. Right there in his office. With the glass walls and the possibility of anyone walking by. I kissed him like I'd been wanting to since that first night at the Overlook. Without fear, without hesitation, without hiding. When we pulled apart, both slightly breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. Is that a yes? I love you too, I whispered. I have for weeks. I was just too scared to admit it. No more being scared. We faced this together. Agreed. Agreed. We left the office together that evening, walking out the front entrance instead of sneaking through separate exits. Marshall's hand found mine as we crossed the parking garage. A simple gesture that felt monumental. Several employees saw us. Tomorrow everyone would know. But as we drove away from the building, heading toward whatever came next, I felt lighter than I had in months. No more hiding. No more pretending. Just us, facing the world together, ready for whatever challenges or judgments awaited. Marshall glanced over at me, smiling in a way that made my heart skip. Ready for this? I squeezed his hand. With you? Always. And for the first time since this all began, I truly believed it.